Welcome to DONNE Talks, provided to you by DONNE Women in Music. I am your host, Gabriella Di Laccio, and in every episode I interview guests who are amplifying change. People who are using their voices and their positions to create bigger impact in our society. Today's guest is British composer Anna Appleby. Anna is a Manchester-based composer. Her music often wrestles with social, political, and spiritual themes. She has written numerous orchestral, operatic, chamber, choral, vocal, electronic, and dance work for a wide variety of professional and community ensembles.
And that's been always the case with female composers. They get the same criticism, either they're being too masculine or they're being too feminine. And it's very, very difficult. And I think men have to navigate this as well, because if they're always being watched for what kind of masculinity they're portraying. I think gender is a huge thing with disappointment. Basically, I gave up. I said, okay, I'm a mixture, I'm masculine, I'm feminine, I'm not going to please everybody. In fact, I can't please anybody most of the time, so I've just got to please myself and be myself. And as an artist, I'm just going to be me, and sometimes I'll be feminine and sometimes I'll be masculine and whatever.
She has a particular interest in writing for the stage and has drawn inspiration from choreographers in the way she works, building her pieces on the strengths and personalities of each ensemble she writes for. Collaboration is at the heart of her creative practice, and she's always keen to meet artists and ensembles who enjoy open conversation and practical research. Anna also writes and performs electronic music under the name of Norisette. Welcome, Anna. It's a pleasure to have you here. Before we go into our subject, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about your journey as a composer. When did you realize you wanted to follow this path? Who inspired you? Just tell us a little bit about you.
Thanks, Gabby. Thanks for that lovely introduction as well. It's great to be here. Yeah, so just a little bit about me. When I was about 15 or 16, I'd been trying to write pop songs for a few years, but I'd never tried to write anything classical.
Okay.
And I was in a youth orchestra playing the oboe, and I had this revelation when we were touring that actually I could spend all of my time doing something. Before that point, I just sort of jack of all trades, loved everything and was also bored by everything. And suddenly here was something I could actually commit to. I had this just amazing sense of, wow, I could do music every day for a long time and not get bored of it. And I'd never felt that way about anything before.
How old were you?
15 or 16. I think maybe 16, but it was sort of gradual as well, because I'd been playing in this orchestra for a couple of years and it did change my life. I suddenly felt like I belonged in the classical music world, whereas before that point, I'd always felt like I love folk, I love jazz, I love pop, I love everything. I didn't really have having a kind of musical family. So at that point, I realized that I could actually play music all the time. And then that led me to trying out something new, which was composing. But the thing that actually started it was I hurt my shoulder and I couldn't play the piano or the oboe at all for a year. And I thought, I still need to do music. So I tried to write it and I had no idea what I was doing. I thought I was the first female composer ever in history.
Oh, that's great.
Like a vacuum, I had no awareness or knowledge of all the women who'd gone before me, but I just thought, I want to do this. I like doing this. I'm going to be the first woman to do it, and that just tells
you the first woman ever.
Yeah, the first woman ever.
Right. It's quite funny when I talked to Rachel Portman. She also told me that she decided really soon, really early, that what she wanted to do, and she said she feels really lucky for that happened in her life, and I bet you feel the same, because I think knowing what you want to do so early is really a gift. It's kind of a present. I feel it the same, because I always knew I wanted to do music somehow.
Absolutely. It was like a spiritual calling, actually, I'd say. I just had this deep sense of I need to write music, and I was obsessed for a long time. My mum would have to call me down for dinner when usually I'd be like running down the stairs like, when's food ready? When's food ready?
Oh, wow.
And I was so obsessed with writing music that I would just forget that anything else was happening. I could just sit at my chair like this, hunched over my keyboard for, hours.
And you would write on the piano?
Yeah, I would always write I had a little keyboard. I still have that keyboard, actually. It's the same one I have in my little office, because I've got an emotional connection with it now.
Of course.
Yeah, it was the only thing that would take my focus for that long. Before that point, I would be distracted by food. I mean, I love food still, but I would just always be thinking, when's the next meal? When's the next meal? I don't care about anything else. At school, my focus would go in lessons. I'd be trying to snack under the desk, or like draw. I drew all the time as well. I used to doodle.
Yeah.
And suddenly, here was something I could actually focus on.
And then you followed up from there. Never did something else.
No, I've just been obsessed. But now that I'm a bit more comfortable in myself, I'm starting to do some other things again, like art. I've gone back to looking at art and writing as well. Just broadening out a bit now because it's 10 years later.
And then to get into this career, how was it for you after you graduated, and how did you feel the beginnings? Because I think now it's really wonderful for you. You're having these amazing opportunities and you're so talented. But I'm sure you will agree with me, there are so many talented people as well, and they probably want to know a little bit from you. How was your journey? Because they probably want to try to do their best as well.
Yeah, so my journey was quite hard because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know there'd been I didn't know any composers. I didn't know how to be a composer. I just thought, right, very logically, if I want to be a professional musician, I should do a music degree. So I realized at that point I hadn't even taken music AS level, which is if anyone who has different exam systems, it's the penultimate year of school. I'd taken art instead. I hadn't really known what to choose. And during that time, I had this revelation that actually I wanted to do music. So I had to go to my teachers at school and say, please, 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 can I take music now, even though it's late in the year? And I was so possessed that they let me do it. And I had to take the whole music A level a bit late. I had to start learning it quite late. So that was quite difficult. And then I applied to Oxford to do music. I thought aim high, may as well. And I didn't even have any music qualifications from school. I had my GCSE, which is the one you do when you're about 14 or 15. Yeah. And I had my piano and my oboe exams. So I had something. But I took these yellowing papers with my scribbles of music on, handwritten, into Oxford to an interview. And I handed them shakily across the desk to Professor Martin Harry, who was very, very kind, and he saw some potential in me. So I was very grateful to him. I think he liked the romantic ideal that I had come from like nowhere with these like yellowed papers, no technology, no knowledge. I think he found it quite funny and
quite fresh.
Yeah, so that was very lucky for me that he saw some potential. And then my Oxford degree was very, very hard. I struggled a lot, and actually that's something I'm going to talk about a bit in this. And then I went on to do a master's in composition because I did better than I expected in my degree. I thought, oh, maybe now I can do another degree and actually just compose rather than doing all of music. The music degree is just kind of everything. So that master's was when I really learned that I didn't know anything about composing at all.
Well, the more you learn, we don't know much. It's always like that.
And I had very nice, kind, supportive supervisors in my master's as well. I had Professor David Horn and Professor Adam Gorg. They were really encouraging too. So these teachers have helped me a lot on my way, seeing potential and encouraging me. But I've always also had this burning passion inside. And then I tried to go freelance straight after my master's, and it was very difficult. So I'm going to talk about that as well. And then after 3 years of that, my dream PhD came along, and somehow I've been lucky enough to get that. And now I have Professor Emily Howard as my supervisor. It's very nice having a female supervisor for the first time. They've all been wonderful, but it is a nice change as well.
Yeah.
And I'm writing an opera. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, that's a summary of my journey.
I'm quite curious about the subject. you chose. And so could you explain a little bit more, what being a big disappointment means to you? Then we talk about what is to be a happy artist, but let's talk about why do you feel like you were a big disappointment, or sometimes we can all be a big disappointment? Talk us a bit more about that.
So I chose this title because I think it will connect with a lot of people, especially people who are either very ambitious and put very high standards on themselves, or who have quite ambitious parents, or have felt a lot of pressure from society or teachers or people around you. I think we all feel that pressure and that expectation. I chose it for me because, when I was little, I was about 6 years old, I decided that I was going to be Prime Minister, that I was going to save the environment. My mum always told me about the environmental crisis, so I thought, right, I'm going to save the planet. Thank goodness we have Greta Thunberg now instead. I thought I'm going to
fine.
Yeah, I thought I'm going to be famous. I'm going to be a famous artist, and I'm going to be in movies. I'm going to be a famous actress. I had all these incredibly ambitious dreams, but that meant that when I became a teenager, I got very, very stressed because little child me, whether it was my parents, my teachers, I don't know, but for some reason I had all these very huge weight of expectation. And I realized as a teenager that life is very hard and that I couldn't actually live up to all these things.
You have to pick a few.
Yeah, they were a bit mad as well. Like a bit. I don't want to be Prime Minister. I'm just going to put that out there. And it wasn't really about so much what I wanted. I think for some reason I thought I had to do this. I had to change the world. I had to do something incredible, which I think is good because you need to have dreams. But I just remember going through this phase as a teenager when I just realized I couldn't live up to anything that I'd put on myself or that people had put on me, and that I didn't know, what I was saying, I couldn't focus on anything at all. I just couldn't. There was no subject that I really thought, this is me and I love this and I'm good enough to do this. And then music sort of just took me on this journey and made me realize that actually I didn't have to know what I was going to become. I could just choose something I actually love doing now in the present moment. At the same time, I had that goal that I did want to be a composer, but I didn't even know really what that meant. I just knew one day somebody will play my music in a concert and it will be amazing. And that was my dream. I didn't know anything else. The first time that happened, the first time I had some music played in a concert, I was so emotional because that was enough, I realized that was actually a big enough dream for me at the time. And it just took a lot of pressure off, I think, to realize that all these expectations I put on myself about what success is and what I was supposed to become, I can't know that. And actually you have to look at what you love doing. So I think that was the reason I chose this. But there's some other things to do with the title as well. Like, every day I feel like I put big expectations on myself for the day. And I also feel like other people have really strong expectations of me as a woman, and we can talk about that later. I think in general, society puts huge expectations on us as people. So I think it connects to a lot of things.
I think this feeling of feeling like a disappointment comes and goes for everybody in our lives, in our careers. Do you feel that women would have this more than men? Or do you think women have the wish to please people more? Because I think there is also this tendency of not disappointing people with your artistic voice sometimes, or do something that will please more people. Or how do you find that as a composer? How long did it take for you to actually find your own voice and stick to it and understand that you are not going to please everybody? We know that as artists, but it's not an easy thing to accept in real life, of course. It's very nice to talk about, yes, I did find my own voice and I know I can't please everybody, but in real life that still hurts sometimes. How does it work for you? So do you feel that you have these journeys of going back and forwards? How would you take yourself out of this frame of mind of feeling that you are a disappointment somehow sometimes?
Yeah, so kind of two big things we can talk about there. I think they do link together really closely. One is, how is it as a woman? And one is, how do I kind of combat that? I think the reason I chose this topic for Donne Women in Music, I think, is that a lot of women feel this pressure to be either the woman who has it all, having children, family, career, beauty, success, money, everything, to have all those things. But also women have these huge obstacles in our way as well because of sexism and misogyny, which means that we are going to maybe encounter more disappointments and failures as a result, and it's not always going to be our fault. So I think it's going to resonate with a lot of people because of that. And when I'm thinking about gender, you know, men have huge pressures on them as well, and men aren't supposed to be, in a lot of societies and cultures still, and a lot of people feel this way still, men are expected to be the breadwinners. They're not supposed to show as much emotion. So I think hand in hand, when women are allowed to be more ambitious, men need to be allowed to be more caring and gentle, so that we're all more free. Because you need that balance in society, because there's lots of jobs that need to be done, like
yes,
children need to be looked after and things, you know, money needs to be earned. So who's going to do those roles? And that shouldn't be all based on gender. And I think that's just the wider topic. But within that, I think the thing is, women aren't given a huge amount of space to develop their personality. I think for women, there's always a sense of looking outwards, looking around, reflecting, creating this energy from within and disrupting, you know, and being an artist, you have to disrupt, you have to create this energy, and you have to respond as well. But I think it can be very hard as a woman to actually know who you are, because you are told so often to reflect and to fit in. And also, I think men who are forced into roles that don't suit them feel this way too. But let's just talk about women for now. I think that women are expected to be beautiful and well-behaved and graceful, and these things that actually art doesn't sit well with that all the time. You need to have grace and elegance in some kinds of performance, and beauty is a huge part of art. So I think that is a very important aesthetic and aspect. But you have to say difficult things and be funny as well, and be challenging and political. And I think one of the reasons
and aggressive if you want to be, or having a more, is that story of Elizabeth McConkie, you know, that when she was writing her music, people used to say that, oh, your music is too masculine, or so it's really strange that the stereotypes that people still have it. Of course, this was a while ago, but I wouldn't be surprised if we would hear comments like that, or the vice versa as well. You know, men can be delicate, and this is really obvious, but somehow I think people still have some unconscious bias of how certain genders should behave in certain professions or in life. And I think we keep fighting this on a daily basis in certain careers for women more than others, I guess. Can we talk about being happy then? Now?
Yeah, I just want to finish one little thing from that I meant to say, which was that I think that crucially as a woman, you can't win in the way that if you try and please everybody. So the disappointment thing is crucial, because if you try to please people by emulating the success that you see men having, you will either lose potentially a sense of yourself because you're trying to be like a man, or if you are feminine and emulate femininity, you'll be accused of only being able to do womanly things. And that's been always the case with female composers. They get the same criticism, either they're being too masculine or they're being too feminine. And it's very, very difficult. And I think men have to navigate this as well, because if they create, maybe not so much when they're creating art, but when they're just being themselves and being their persona, you know, they're always being watched for what kind of masculinity they're portraying. I think, you know, gender is a huge thing with disappointment. Basically, I gave up. I said, okay, I'm a mixture. I'm masculine, I'm feminine. I'm not going to please everybody. In fact, I can't please anybody most of the time. So I've just got to please myself and be myself. And as an artist, I'm just going to be me. And sometimes I'll be feminine and sometimes I'll be masculine and whatever. I'm just going to screw that. So this connects to how to be happy. I think you have to just let go of needing to please everybody, because it's not going to happen. Firstly, it's impossible. Yeah. Secondly, it's unreasonable, because actually society puts so many expectations on us of what we should be. And most of these expectations are set by people who are in power and want to hold on to that power. That's the case with gender, but it's also the case with money. And that's something we'll talk about a bit later as well, I think. So yeah, being happy, I think, is letting go of the pressures and expectations that you have put on yourself as a result of society putting them on you. Maybe your parents, maybe your peers, maybe the media that you watch. it can be quite hard to unpick. It can be quite hard to work out who you are after all of that. And I don't have any answers because, you know, I'm 26, I'm going through all this turmoil and questioning, but it's just something that I want to think about a lot at the moment, because I'm looking at how hard I've worked for 10 years and I've achieved a lot of things, but the things that actually bring me happiness aren't necessarily the things that look the most impressive or look like the things I'm supposed to want to achieve. Sometimes the thing that makes me happiest is having a day off and sunbathing and eating lots of good food and enjoying being alive, and not worrying about the fact maybe somebody else is working harder than me and achieving more.
Comparison, isn't it?
Especially now in lockdown, I think we're all going through that, you know?
Yes. Comparison is a huge thing that happens to all of us at some point. Did you ever suffer that at some point in your career? I know that we all go back and forwards and try not to, because sadly, I think, I don't know why, very early in our education, I think in music, you only think only a few people can succeed. I don't know why we've been taught that. That's what I felt. I don't feel this anymore. I feel like the world is so big and there's so many people who like different things. And I think there is space for a lot more people that we were told to believe. And it doesn't matter in which level of careers or which genre of music. But I think at the beginning of my career, I had this thing, oh my God, only very few people will survive, only very few people will make it. And I kept comparing myself with the ones who were already there, and then constantly feeling I'm not there. How can I get there? Or comparing myself with people who were completely the opposite of me, which I would never in a million years become anything closer to that person. So did you ever have that? Did you suffer the comparison disease? Please don't, people. Just get out of it.
I think we all do, and I absolutely do. I think social media sometimes makes it harder because it encourages envy, you know? It encourages comparison. Oh, I've got fewer likes, I've got fewer followers, I'm doing it wrong. And actually, social media's added to this trick, this sense that there's a way of counting how well you're doing. There's numbers. So it's either money or it's followers or it's likes or it's something that you can count. And actually in the arts, you can't count that. It's, you know, the biggest successes I've had are when somebody's come up to me after a concert with tears in their eyes saying, your piece moved me. And maybe it was just a little local church concert and there were 12 people in the audience, but that's more important to me than doing a big fancy premiere in an opera house that actually maybe everybody hates. Like, do you know what I mean? It's kind of, and that's not just about pleasing them either. Sometimes the audience might hate it too, and I love it. And actually, this is the thing about being a disappointment and a happy artist. You've got to really fight to hold on to what you love and what you have to say, even when it's not popular. And even when you're disappointing everybody around you because they say, oh, you're a composer, like, why haven't you written a hit jingle or a hit pop song or a hit musical yet? And I'm like, well, that's not really what motivates me. And I think there is this is when we talk about the tension between surviving and thriving, because like obviously privilege plays a huge part. If you have financial privilege, then you can choose what projects you do, what kind of career you have, because you can take risks. Whereas if you're fighting to be freelance and struggling to earn enough money, which I experienced for the past few years, you have to take any project on and you have to try and please the people who are commissioning you because you need the money. And I think this is a really hard struggle as an artist. And yeah, privilege plays a huge part, because if you don't have to fight, I've worked minimum wage jobs alongside doing difficult commissions, and that's with parents who have supported me financially as well. I'm not going to lie and say I've had no financial support, whereas there's plenty of composers who haven't got any financial support at all. So how on earth can they always be true to themselves? That's a very, very difficult thing.
The most challenging part, isn't it, for people who are, and there's so many who have to do waiter jobs. So I had to do admin jobs beginning of my career as well, to continue to follow my dream. And then at some point, for these people, for all of us, there are moments when you just feel like, oh, will I ever do it? And I think for me, I think there are two things, and be interesting to see what you think. But I think there are two things. I'm not going to say the being successful, whatever that word is, but is a musician or an artist is an easy career. It's not an easy career. But I think a bit like you, I believe you are an artist. And if you are an artist, you will always be. If you don't become that, you're unhappy somehow and you live in this turmoil of not fulfilling or, never being who you truly are. And if you really are an artist, you will find ways, because you can't live without that. So even if you put your own concert in your local church, as you said, and then you will find ways of fulfilling that. But of course, when you are struggling to pay rent and then you don't even get a commission, I think when you talk about, oh, I need to take a commission for something silly, some people don't even reach that stage yet. So I think those are the people that we should maybe try to inspire as well, to sort of, okay, let's try not to stay inside the box. I mean, maybe for us, for singers, it's only going for auditions. Yeah, but maybe don't go on for auditions. Maybe put your own concert. So as a composer, what would be your advice for somebody, for example, doesn't even get a commission, even if it's a bad commission, that they don't want to do it. They are not even there, but they really want to. Are you maybe would advise to show their music online or create a community? I think because the only good thing I'm thinking about social media at the moment is the power that we have now to actually connect with people who want to connect with us. Okay, if you don't want to follow me, fine. But if somebody wants to follow this discussion, for example, great, because they will be interested in that. And I think for a composer or any musician, it can be a good thing as well. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a really crucial moment for me was realizing that it's okay to do a normal job to have that financial support. Sometimes that's teaching as well, which is very rewarding. I've done quite a lot of teaching. Something that takes the pressure off so that you don't have to be worrying so much about success in your composition. So if you haven't had any commissions yet and you haven't had any work yet, focus on financial stability. Like, you need to have some income, and that doesn't have to be music. Just have something, but it also needs to be something that doesn't drain you and take away all of your creativity and time. So it's quite hard to find the right job, but I've done some of the better ones were just like part-time call center jobs or something weird like that, where it's not very glamorous, but it was not using my brain in a way that drained me. Yeah. So I was able to compose alongside. So just starting from the bottom, that's the kind of thing I've done. And then with my music, I thought, okay, well, I've got my money now. I can pay my rent, so I can do anything. So yeah, sharing things online. But actually, I think it's also important not to have to share immediately. I think it's important to give yourself the space to just develop and learn and make mistakes and study and improve without having to immediately be judged, because actually if you put your stuff out there too soon, it's very, very vulnerable, and you need to find the right spaces and times to do that. So I'm trying to learn not to always share everything I do immediately. I quite often wait a few months before I share something.
That long?
Because, yeah, sometimes even a year, because you have to remove yourself slightly so it's not as painful. And I think inevitably I'm so often disappointed. So often I'll spend months and months working on something, and then even as someone who's had quite a lot of successes, I've been very fortunate. I'll make something that I care about deeply, and then it'll get absolutely no reception at all. Like, nobody will respond to it. And I feel disappointed, but because I waited, I gave myself a distance between the pain of creating it and the joy of creating it and all the emotions in there, and then this sort of more promotional side of actually sharing it. If you share it immediately, then you can get crushed immediately, and it's very hard to build your confidence up again, because it is always disappointing and vulnerable being an artist. You're never going to get the reception that you dreamed of. You're always going to be critical of yourself as well.
You get the reception which is completely the opposite of what you expected for other things. I have exactly a different, I don't wait so long to share things, but I can tell you one thing. Everything that I ever recorded, I almost never look at it or listen to it again, because I always feel the moment it's out there, you feel, oh, could have done that better. And then I have a lovely sound engineer that we work with at DONNE, which is John Taylor. He's a god in the music industry. And he said something to me that really is, I always remember now. He said, well, Gabby, recording is a photograph. It's just a photograph, and that's that moment. So next time you take a different photograph, it's going to be another moment. Doesn't mean it's going to be better. And that, for me, that really means a lot now, because I go, okay, that was my photograph of that moment, and I can never repeat that. And every concert, for me, I'm much more like a live performer. I love performing live. That's, for me, it's much more rewarding than recording. But I know recording is important, especially now with the project Recording Music by Women is so important. But it can be soul killing, you know. Especially there are some tracks you go, oh, I really like this one, which is really rare, I think, for any artist to sort of, yeah, I think this one, and then zero response.
Exactly, and it's strange, and you can't, I think this is the thing about when you mentioned a while ago in our conversation about music feeling like a capitalist system, there's only limited opportunities available and you've got to fight to get them. This is a lie, because actually the people who make you feel that way are the gatekeepers who have the money, and they want to restrict because, well, actually, if you think it from that perspective, they've got some money, they want to give it to the person they think is the most deserving. But the thing is, their taste and their personal opinion comes so much into it. So you've got to resist and believe your own taste and your own opinion as well, because you need those opportunities, but you can also create your own opportunities. And this is going back what you said about advice to people who haven't had many opportunities or commissions or anything. You can create your own opportunities. It's very hard because you do need some money, and sometimes that means you have to apply for funding, which is hard work, or you do something as a labor of love while working a job alongside, or you find somebody else who's similar to you, and you both, generally I'd say the best thing to do is find somebody else and collaborate with them. This is what I do all the time, because as soon as you're not alone, it's so much easier, because you can do the work together, you can apply for funding together, you can keep each other motivated. Even if other people don't respond immediately, you can say to each other, like, this is really great, we're doing something really great here. And it's also more fun. And I think this is part about being happy. Like, why be the solitary, miserable artist? Why not be with your friends and doing your art? And actually, that's my favorite thing, and that's what keeps me going, because I just go crazy by myself. and there's a few other things I wanted to
advise. Collaborate, and
yeah.
And
but even if it's not collaborating on the same thing, like, sometimes you need to give yourself the space to really nurture your own creativity. That's very important too, because sometimes if you go into collaboration and the other person's a lot more dominant than you, and I say this is quite a strident person as well, you can end up sacrificing too much. And I think it's very important to find people to work with where you know that they genuinely want you to succeed as well, and it's about you as well, because then that equality will take you forwards. If you're just using somebody to get the exposure, or they're just using you to get the exposure, it's not a collaboration. No. It's about finding people who value what you're doing as much as you value it, and who enjoy it, and who see something. And that, you will find, generally is so much more rewarding emotionally and artistically.
And artistically, yeah.
But again, the problem is, it always comes back to money, because we're always saying, well, we need funding, and it is hard. Like, I don't have the answers. I'm not gonna pretend it's not hard. Like, I'm still struggling with this all the time, but it doesn't mean I don't have the dream still of staying true to what I actually enjoy doing. And I also think with this capitalist system, with the envy and the limited opportunities, if you can fight that urge within yourself to feel envy, then you can start celebrating where you are right now a bit more. Because I realize, like, if I'm always looking ahead to what I haven't done yet, and who I haven't pleased yet, like, oh, this person really wanted me to do this thing, and this person expects me to do this, and oh, my parents gave me some money a long time ago, and I haven't proved to them that I'm the best composer in the universe, so have I screwed up? I think we put so many, like, pressures on ourselves for the future. And again, I'm saying this as someone who's been privileged to have that help and support But you need to look at where you are now and say, what am I actually happy doing now? And I look at myself now and I think I get to compose every day if I want to, which is what my teenage self was desperate to do. I've got loads of artistic friends who are amazing, and I didn't really have any composer friends or many musician friends when I was younger. So I felt very alone. And I have my health, and there's a worldwide pandemic, and I just value like the things like my health and my home and having food and having still the energy to make some art. And that is actually reminding me, like, yeah, you can be a happy artist now, even though there's no concerts coming up. There's nothing to like push myself towards, but actually I'm still making, still just enjoying it for what it is.
If you are enjoying this podcast, there are 3 simple things you can do to support our work. First, subscribe. This way you will never miss an episode. Second, tell about us to a friend or family member. You will always have someone to share the stories of this interview, and this way we can raise awareness and inspire more people in our way. Third, give us a review on iTunes or whatever other channel you subscribe. This way you will be helping others to find our podcast. Now, let's get back to my conversation with Anna Appleby.
Would you like to say anything else before we go into questions? Anything I didn't ask you?
I wrote something about role models. I think just really quickly, when I was younger, I was always looking for role models. And as a woman, I think it was harder because I didn't see as many women to look up to doing the kind of thing that I wanted to. I would find them. I did find them eventually, but and I had male role models as well. Anyone can be a role model, but it is helpful when someone looks like you. And I think this plays into intersectionality. This is why diversity is so important in terms of gender, in terms of ethnicity, in terms of disability. If you don't see role models who you can connect with, it doesn't give you that hope and that vision as easily. You can get it anyway, but then you become the exception rather than the rule. And actually, it should be the rule that there are people like you to look up to. So that's a really important thing about role models. But then it's always crucial to also distance yourself from those role models and allow yourself to be yourself and say, I don't have to be the same. And Gabby, you were saying you're looking at all these people and like, oh, look at what they're doing, and I really wish I haven't done what they did, and that's sort of beating yourself up because you're not doing what someone else is doing. I think it's very important to look at yourself now and say, what am I bringing already? And I'm not that person. And I needed some role models, and I need role models, but actually I need to be myself ultimately because they're human too, I'm human. And we end up being role models for others, but mostly because we've been ourselves. That's usually what makes us a role model. So that's a balance as well.
I have a question here. What made you want to do a PhD, and what is it doing to your practice? Is it what you expected?
Yeah, so the PhD thing, this is again a balance between pragmatism and vision, because I needed some stable income. I was really struggling last year, actually. I had a really big dip where I didn't have much money coming in. I applied for some regular jobs. I even applied for a full-time job in an insurance company because I was pretty poor at one point last year. And then this PhD came along and I saw it and I thought, my goodness, I always said to myself that I would only do a PhD if my dream one came along, which would be making an opera, collaborating, and doing it in Manchester. And it had to be fully funded because I don't have any money. So it appeared like a vision. My friend sent it to me, Alexia sent it to me. And if Alexia hadn't sent it to me, I don't think I would have ever known it happened, it existed. So I was very, very fortunate and grateful. And I thought, yes, firstly, this is going to provide me with stable income if I get it because it's funded. And then I can be less stressed for a few years because I've been juggling like 12 different things at one time for a few years. And also it's my dream to research collaboration in opera. And how often am I going to get a commission to do a full opera with the BBC Philharmonic? So I was like, this is so exciting. So I was very, very fortunate to be accepted on that PhD. And I've got a poet, Niall Campbell, who's my collaborator. So that was why I'm doing it. What's it doing to my practice? Is it what I expected? I think my practice is changing. I'm becoming more free to be myself again, because actually all these commissions and teaching and minimum wage jobs and things I've been juggling for years, I've been trying very hard to fit into everybody's mold of what they need me to be for that job that I'm doing. And with a PhD, you're a lot more free to pursue your own research. And it's just making me feel like I can focus on learning and developing and not having to immediately create a product. There's no kind of snappy immediacy with it. It's a long project, and I actually need that. I need this time to develop and grow and know that I can pay my bills without checking my contract every 5 seconds to make sure I'm doing the right thing. So it's freeing me up a lot. It is kind of what I expected. I think I'm just in the first year of it, so it's a bit easier in your first year. You're given a lot of time to discover what you want to do. I think it will get a lot harder in the next couple of years. But again, I will be battling with those expectations and vision. Like vision and expectation, different things. So if I give in to the weight of expectation, I will lose my motivation with it. And I'll think, oh my goodness, I can't create the best opera ever in the world, and I'm failing, and I'm failing at the PhD. Whereas if I focus on my vision of wanting to create a good opera collaboratively with a poet, which is my vision, then I'll stay motivated. So that's my main learning. So I can only disappoint myself if I lose my vision. I don't want to be disappointed by feeling that I'm not living up to all this duty and this expectation. That's not helpful.
I have a question here from somebody sent from Instagram who wants to remain anonymous, but I'm in my first year of composition degree, and I'm the only woman in my class, finding it very disencouraging, and I am thinking of giving up. What would you say to me?
I'd say, firstly, it's very honest of you to acknowledge that you feel that way, because it's completely reasonable to feel a bit lost when you look around and you feel like the odd one out. Yeah, thanks, Mira. It's just thanks. Thank you for asking and reaching out, because I think you've realised there are other people out there who can encourage you, even if the people in your immediate environment aren't necessarily encouraging you. And I'd say try and find that wider community, because just because you're at that particular institution with that particular group of people, that doesn't have to be your universe. So I'm really pleased that you've reached out to DONNE, to us, because you're realizing there are other people out there who've gone through similar challenges. You know, when I was at university, I think in my year, in my undergrad, there were 75 people in my year. I think about 20 people did composition, and there were about, I think it was either three or four women in the whole year out of 75 took composition for their finals, and I was one of those. And I so often nearly gave up, even though I'd had that dream of I want to be a composer. You know, I just felt so like overwhelmed. In my first year, I got 55% for my composition portfolio. I was not very happy. And I also didn't know any other girls who were doing it. In my immediate friendship group, no one had decided to take composition in their first year who was a girl. And I just thought, oh, and I'm rubbish as well. So I'm letting women down, and I'm not good enough, and I don't know what to do. So I did nearly quit. But I actually talked to my supervisor, and I said, look, I'm really feeling very discouraged. I was able to reach out, and he encouraged me. And I think I'm going to try and do that for you now. I don't know you, I don't know who you are, but I'm going to say, why do you want to compose? Or is it not that why you want to compose? What is it that draws you in? Because something's making you want to make music. Something makes you want to make sound. And even if you don't see people around you like yourself doing that, focus on what about it makes you happy. Because it's going to be hard as well. Maybe at university, they're going to assess you on things that seem pretty crazy, like you'll be marked on your compositions, and it might seem really unfair, and you might get a bad mark like I did. I also didn't get a very good mark with my master's, and I still kept going. Because the people around you shouldn't get to decide that. You should decide for yourself. I like making noises, I like making music, I like making sound. And even if people don't encourage you in your immediate environment, yeah, look around. There's a lot of women making music out there, and I wish I could have a conversation with you and ask you more about it. Actually, you can
write to Anna on Instagram.
Yeah, send me an email, because I'm just talking at you now. I don't know you.
Exactly. And
don't give up, because you'll really regret it if you give up. I would have, oh goodness me, if I'd given up after my first year, I don't know what I'd be doing now, but I don't think I'd be very happy, because I love my job, and you know, I'm not in a group of boys now. I think also, like, boys can support me sometimes. Like, some of my male peers are very encouraging and supportive and generous. But I think at university you have this feeling of like everyone's in it for themselves and very competitive. So I think you don't get that in encouragement yet, but it will come. Please email me, because I'm not giving you the best answer, and I'd love to talk to you about it.
Don't give up. Okay, and I have time for one more, and then I also have my final question. It also came on the message. Do you feel like you have to be less feminine to be taken seriously in the music industry world?
Yeah, so I'm very comfortable being feminine now, but I think when I started, I mean, I've said previously in this live chat, I'm very comfortable being masculine and feminine. I'm comfortable with both sides of myself. Some days I feel very androgynous, and some days I feel very feminine. But yes, in the professional sphere, for the first few years, I cut my hair really short. I liked having short hair, that was fine, but I felt like I didn't really realize that all my clothes that I would wear for professional events were like shirts and blazers and trousers, and I had short hair, and I didn't wear much jewelry, and I felt quite, I definitely presented myself in a more masculine way, because I think I felt more confident when I did that. Partly because I was looking around me. It's like the previous question about looking around and just seeing boys around you. I looked around, and what I saw around me was masculine clothing and masculine behavior. So I emulated it, because that's how I thought I should fit in. And then now that I've been doing it for a lot longer, I feel like, no, I love being feminine as well. And I love being a woman. And actually there's a lot of strength in femininity. And sometimes the loudest feminists are sometimes we've seen like less feminine feminists being the ones who are the most outspoken. And it's really important that women are allowed to be masculine and allowed to be that if that's themselves. You know, some women want to be androgynous and want to be masculine, but if you feel feminine and you want to express that, you should, because there's a lot of strength and power in it. Something I was thinking about is like, what does success look like in a feminist society? And I think it's a really difficult question to ask ourselves, because we've not seen it. We don't know what it looks like to celebrate feminine power and what that even means. It just sounds like, it can sound like nonsense to us, because we think of success as this masculine ideal. But it's crucial. It's always a balance. It's crucial that women who feel masculine should be allowed to express that and feel comfortable and not feel criticized for it. And women who feel feminine should be allowed to express that, you know. We need this balance, because men too need to be allowed to be feminine and masculine and anything in between.
And I think that goes back to the importance of the diversity in role models now that we really need more and more. Okay, I need to...
Yeah, I just want to bring in one more thing with that. I think we need to remember that ethnicity comes into this as well, because actually as a white woman, there's a lot that I can't speak about from experience. And I think gender and ethnicity hugely connected in terms of role models and expectations. And yeah, it's a really important thing to think about.
Yeah, I think when I started this project, it's really amazing. Of course, we do focus more on women. And I think that was a decision, because I am a woman and I am a woman in music. But of course, we can't forget that diversity should be the highest goal. You know, we need representation of women, of different gender, of different people, color, backgrounds. It doesn't matter, you know.
I think there's been a history of women making progress in feminism, but it being like white women first, and that's it's just so unfair. And I think also there's no reason for it to be the case. There's no reason for it to be like, let's have a white female president and then let's have a female president of color. Like, why? Or then let's have a trans president. Like, why then? You know, it should be together, and we actually need that, because otherwise it doesn't work. Progress and equality have to happen together. But you're right to focus on gender in your project, because we can't we have to focus on something, and then we need to work together with people who are focusing on different aspects.
Well, thank you so much. Before we finish, I have my final question for you. So back to women in music. So I think this is a question people ask me the most, and I think those sessions are being really helpful because it's going to help me to have better answers. So we have amazing talent out there, full stop, like women composers, women performers. But in this case, let's talk about composers. We have access to their music much more than we ever had in the past. And yes, their music is out there to be found. And we have amazing initiatives like Donne and like so many others. I can't mention because I always forget one and then it's unfair. We have an amazing initiative making this idea of finding this music easier for everybody. But still, at least in my opinion, the move to achieve equality is really, the pace is very slow, right? To see this reflecting in concert halls, really, really slow. So in your opinion, one, what do you think is the main reason? Of course, I know it's more than one. And two, what can we do to make a bigger impact and create a real faster change?
Yes, I mean, it's the biggest question because you can't make a career as a female artist if you're not given the same opportunities and the same money. And those opportunities and that money come from concerts and audiences. And at the moment, online audiences, but you know, in the future it will be live programming again. And I think for me, the main reason that it happens is two. One is that the audiences don't have the familiarity. And so the programmers say, well, we need to do things that people know so that they buy the tickets, because classical music is kind of an unstable art form. If we just focus on classical music for now, classical music is quite an unstable art form. There's always more money's needed. So programmers are quite nervous about putting things on they don't think people will recognize because they worry that the tickets won't sell. Now, that's understandable for events that are like one opera, okay? But if it's a concert with 3 pieces in, then it makes absolutely no sense. If you're going to put a new piece in or a contrasting piece in the middle, why shouldn't that be by a woman? Or why shouldn't 2 of them be by women, but then you've got one really famous Beethoven piece that everybody wants to come and see? And actually, a lot of ensembles are doing that now. So that's one way of, that's a problem, and that's one way of combating it. But with that familiarity thing, this idea of like household names, I think education is so important, because if school children are taught female composers, then even if they don't study music, they will remember that name when they grow up. So if they hear that music in school, as an audience, they'll be able to recognize that name. And then also with that, I think crucially, as someone who's taught myself, I had to make a conscious effort to try and teach myself about music by women and how, from the past, and how it could be a model for composition, so that with my students, when I'm teaching them techniques for composition or music theory, I'm not just saying, look at this Bach, or look at this Scriabin, or look at Shostakovich. I can say, look at this piece by Judith Weir, look at this piece by Ethel Smythe, look at this piece by Florence Price, look at this piece. You know, there's so many different people that I can say, here's a model, Kaya Sarayaho. You know, like now, because of educating myself, I can think of all these pieces. But still, because I wasn't taught those at university and school, I have to make the extra time to learn so that I can actually use it as a compositional model. So teachers need to teach themselves what their teachers didn't teach them, so they can pass on the new knowledge to their students. And then their composing students, their performing students, their musicology students will have these names in their mind and this understanding of how women's music can provide a model. And then when they go into the concert hall, even if it's just a local concert or a big concert, they are able and confident to perform that music, to program that music, because they understand it. And I think, you know, I can sit at my piano and I can bash out some Beethoven badly, and I don't feel guilty, because I'm like, well, hundreds of people are playing it well, so that's fine. But I have some music by Amy Beach that's piano music, and I think, well, I could play this, and I do play it, but I don't want to play it to people like, oh, look at me performing Amy Beach, because I haven't been taught about that music properly, and I don't fully understand how to interpret it. So I really wish that somebody who is an expert on Amy Beach would teach me how to interpret that music. And I think so it's all about canons and teaching for me and awareness.
So that's it. Expert on Amy Beach, write to Anna.
For listeners wanting to know more about Donne and everything we do, please check our website on www.donne-uk.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, and while you're there, it would be great if you could rate and review the show and spread the word on social media. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to be with you in our next interview.